Welcome to Guerrillapreneur, the Art of Waging Small Business Warfare podcast, teaching Davids how to defeat Goliaths. Now here's your host, Mark Anthony Peterson.
Welcome back to the podcast for entrepreneurs, startups, and business mavericks. In this podcast, we teach entrepreneurs how to defeat corporate giants. In the story of David and Goliath, David defeated a much taller and stronger Goliath, not by fighting the giant in hand-to-hand combat, but by using technology, a slingshot. The slingshot allowed the smaller David to attack from a distance that minimized the advantages that Goliath had over the smaller David. My name is Mark Anthony Peterson. I am a serial entrepreneur and the managing executive at Sierra Consulting, a leading small business strategy and technology consulting firm. I am also the author of the book, Guerrillapreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths, which is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. This podcast is brought to you by Sierra Consulting. An idea can launch a business. A strategy can take it global. During our last podcast, we defined the term slingshot technology as a disruptive technology that shakes up the industry by helping startups profitably capture previously underserved customer segments and delivering products and services at a price equal to or better than the corporate giant. We also discuss the 12-step process for developing slingshot technology. Sign up at our website, sierra.com, and you can gain access to this guide as well as other startup templates. Today we have an extremely exciting show. We have an interview with Robert Armstrong, the founder and CEO of the Selma Good Company, a Selma, Alabama-based company, my hometown. Robert's company bakes cookies. G-Mama Cookies is what he calls them, and he started out baking them in his kitchen, and now they're on the shelves of over 1,000 stores. If you haven't tried his G-Mama Cookies, you really should. They're addictive. I love them almost as much as I love eating hamburgers. But before we jump into today's interview, let's discuss what's new in Guerrillapreneur News. Guerrillapreneur News, news about the sharing and circular loop economy. Smart. Everybody knows Smart, the smart car. Well, they're launching a service that competes with the Mercedes service, Croove, and their service is called Smart Ready to Share. Smart Ready to Share allows owners to enter times when the vehicle will be available and invite friends and colleagues to use it. Friends and colleagues will be sent an email allowing them to register and create an account. Friends and colleagues who are invited to use the car can then book the vehicle and even open the doors of the vehicle using the smartphone app. Smart Ready to Share uses the vehicle's keyless entry function. So when you get the invitation, you get to the car, you can unlock the doors with the smartphone app because of the keyless entry function integrated into the car. Smart Ready to Share will initially launch as an option alongside another venture that Smart is launching called Smart Ready to Drop, the biggest in-car parcel delivery trial ever to take place in Germany. Smart Ready to Share was presented at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas this year, and they plan to launch it later this year in Germany. We've talked a lot about Uber. Well, what about bicycles? How about sharing those? Well, as you know, bikes are huge in China, and bike sharing services are really starting to dominate the market there. Chinese bike sharing startup Mobike closed a $215 million Series D funding round led by Tencent Holding and Warburg Pincus LLC. Mobike, founded in 2015 as one of several bike sharing services in China. Mobike allows users to unlock and pay to rent the company's bicycles through the smartphone app. Bike sharing has flourished in China and is even taking hold among white-collar employees, especially in congested areas. But bike sharing isn't just taking hold in China. We're seeing that phenomenon take hold here in the United States as well. Edison Partners announced a $10 million Series B financing round for the Massachusetts-based Zagster. Now, Zagster is the leading provider of public-private bike-sharing systems in the U.S. Zagster operates more than 140 fully hosted, turnkey bike-sharing programs in more than 35 U.S. states and in parts of Canada. If you've ever visited Washington, D.C., you'll see tons of their kiosks around the city where you can insert a credit card, rent a bike, and park that bike somewhere else around town. Zagster's unique business model and flexible technology platform enables bike sharing to thrive in a wide variety of markets, including small and medium-sized cities, universities, corporate campuses, and residential properties. And as I mentioned, places like D.C. The bike-sharing market is starting to explode, and Zagster is positioned to take full advantage of it. In 2016, Zagster achieved 300% growth in their implemented programs and a 400% growth in the number of deployed bicycles. Now, the sharing economy is not just limited to the U.S. It is starting to skyrocket in Africa as well, especially in places like Kenya. According to the African Business magazine, Airbnb offers more than 4,000 homes for rent across Kenya, which is more than double the number they had in 2015. The number of guests staying at these homes tripled over that same time period. So Kenya is becoming a hotbed for new sharing model startups, especially like Little Cabs. A new startup that was launched in July of 2016 is a ride-sharing service similar to Uber, and it was launched by telecommunications company Safaricom. Already, since July, they've acquired 2,500 drivers and have more than 90,000 active accounts. And here's what's cool about what Little Cabs does. The drivers can sell you discounted airtime for your cell phone, and they can get a fee for making that sale. So that's like a factory within a factory, right? A shared car is also selling you other needed solutions while you're on your trip. That's pretty cool. Now, it may go under-recognized here in this country, but a cell phone is extremely important in Africa. It's as important as the Social Security number is for us, because they don't have a Social Security number. The cell phone number has essentially become that, used by many banking entities as a way to prove that you own the accounts that you've set up. So offering airtime for sale at discounted prices while also giving you a discounted ride is a great value proposition and may just be the tipping point for Little Cabs. We're also seeing other sorts of startups take hold in Kenya, like Link, a service that's very similar to Angie's List, which allows Kenyans to book plumbers and DJs and other workers and pay them by the task. Now, a number of people think services like Link will really start to help the underemployed in Kenya find ways to earn more money. So the sharing economy is transforming a lot of different economies around the world. While we're on that subject of task-based work, or what we call the gig economy, let's dig down into that a little bit more, because it really is transforming not only millennials as they try to find a job in a tough economy, it's starting to take hold in companies where you have people with established careers. According to Fast Company, a third of Adobe's 1,000 employees have a second job in the gig economy, and that 56% of Adobe's workers predict that they will have multiple jobs in the future. The annual report from Upwork and Freelancers Union found that more than 55 million people, or 35% of the U.S. workforce, participated in the gig economy last year. That is telling you that we're getting better utilization of work at a better price when people want to perform it. As the infrastructure itself starts to build out around the gig economy, I think you're going to see a tremendous shift in power to those with talent and ideas away from those who just have the funds. It's very exciting. let's move forward and talk a little bit more about that infrastructure since we mentioned it. Getting paid is critical to someone who's working in the gig economy. And you have two infrastructure players that are fighting to make that easier for you. Now, you can remember like legacy players like PayPal, who made it very easy for you to get money delivered to your email account. Well, you got two new players. Active Hours, which is a direct-to-consumer startup that lets hourly wage earners draw small amounts of their paycheck before payday. So you can essentially determine when you want to get paid. Instead of getting a title loan or a payday loan, now you can draw against earned dollars and get that money when you need it to pay bills. Well, Active Hours just announced a $22 million funding round just this past month. So they're starting to get momentum and have the funds to continue to extend their platform. Hyperwallet is also a part of the gig economy and competes with Active Hours in providing flexible payment options. Hyperwallet is billed as the top global payout provider in this new economy, and in 2017 they plan to open a London-based office, which is the next step for them in trying to extend a global reach to gig workers. Hyperwallet's platform provides a growing number of organizations a frictionless, transparent, and reliable way to manage payments and enhance the payee's experience anywhere in the world. So as these infrastructure players move into places where the gig economy is starting to take hold, like Kenya, in other countries, you can see the ease at which this trend will continue to take place, and talent will find opportunities anywhere in the world. Very, very exciting. Guerrillapreneur News gets more and more exciting every podcast because we are seeing the growth in companies that are utilizing waste to create profit, that are using the shared economy to get better utilization of assets, including human assets, human capital. And we're seeing the participation of entrepreneurs in projects probably unheard of 10 to 15 years ago. Now, let's talk about an entrepreneur that has taken full advantage of this sharing economy to launch his business, Robert Armstrong. Okay, hi, this is Mark Peterson, the Guerrillapreneur Podcast, and I am here with Robert Armstrong, President and CEO of the Selma Good Company in Selma, Alabama, and they manufacture Mommas Cookies. Robert, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I am a big fan of your product. Probably shouldn't be eating so many cookies, but it's that time of year where cookies are the thing to have with a glass of milk. And it's also a thing that you should share with all your friends and family, particularly around the holiday season. I wanted to have you tell us your story because it's such a fascinating story of entrepreneurship. And I think it can help our audience understand the trials and tribulations of launching a business. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's start with the early days before you got to where you are now with your business.
Yeah, sounds good. Again, my name's Robert Armstrong. I'm a Selma boy. Was born and raised here, and have an unusual desire to see Selma kind of be what it can be. It's got a lot of potential here, and we've got a lot of people here that love our town. So I grew up here, went to Alabama, graduated from the University of Alabama in 2008, worked in Birmingham, as a lot of people from the state do, and moved back home in 2009 with kind of an idea to start a business. It wasn't actually cookies at the time. And pursued that idea for a month or two, kind of fell through the opportunity, and I ended up deciding to start a cookie company. My grandmother, her name was Annie Armstrong. She too was born and raised in Selma, and had these small chocolate chip cookies when I was a kid that she used to make for our family get-togethers. We've got about 20 people in our family, so we'd all sit around eating these little bite-sized cookies she would make, and really couldn't stop eating them. I mean, everybody in the family loved them, and they were real addicting. They were small, just had a great, like, salty, sweet combination taste to them. They were crispy, which was somewhat unique, had a lot of butter in them. So when I was about in 9th grade, I told my grandmother, I said I was going to make $1 million off these cookies. And I was really messing with her. She was real fun, kind of great personality, thought I was hilarious. And honestly, I wasn't serious. But during my time in college, she would make them for me as I would go back to school. And I'd have a tin that I'd bring over to my buddy's house. And I'd watch people eat them and see kind of what the reaction was. And everybody loved them every time, we had them. And so that was always in the back of my head. What if we turned that into a business? What if that was actually, how would that look? Would people buy these? Is there anything out there that compares? So fast forward to 2009 when I moved back home, I decided, I wasn't married, didn't have a mortgage. I was able to live in a small cabin out in the woods that my parents owned for free and start a business. So I did. I had a 4Runner at the time. An older model, got $7,500 lien against the truck, and started the Selma Good Company. And where I got the name Selma Good is there's always been some negativity around Selma. We've been in the news for a lot of things that we aren't proud of, and so I thought, you know what, I'm going to name my company Selma Good, and kind of the face of that, and kind of something good coming out of Selma. It's kind of the gist of it. And we called my grandmother Gami Mama. And so when I launched the business, what I asked her to do is teach me how to bake the cookies, which at the time I thought was going to be pretty easy. But fast forward, I know baking is very, very complicated. It's very scientific. I mean, it's basically, it's like your lab, your chemistry lab, basically. But at the time, I thought, well, you just take a little butter, take a little sugar, and mix it up, put it in an oven, and boom, there you go, you got a cookie. But she taught me how to bake them in her kitchen, and then what I did is I asked a restaurant around town that is only open during dinner, they were closed during the day, if I could use their kitchen during the day, and just get started. So I had gotten a local design firm to design some labels for me, a logo, because I knew that was really important, and I really kind of invested some money in that because I knew the market I was targeting was really initially going to be kind of the gift gourmet market, because I sat down and kind of ran my cost, and based off my cost, what could I sell a product for and actually make money. And so I knew that price range wasn't going to be competitive in a grocery store. So I knew I needed to kind of, where was my target going to be? And initially, I also looked at other brands that had started too, kind of what their roadmap looked like. And a lot of them started out kind of in that space of, you see them in gift baskets, you see them in boutiques and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I decided on that market. And I knew my design, the package needed to be targeted at that. It needed to be higher end, unique, crafty kind of look. So I invested a lot of time and a lot of that $7,500 in the design of my package.
So let me just drill down on that little piece there. So you were able to take the bulk of the money that you had from the loan you took out on your car and not invest it in a kitchen, which most people would need to start baking to actually deliver the cookies, but in the design of the package, because that was critical to the market that you were initially targeting. So that decision to leverage someone else's kitchen was key to you getting that first step into your business.
Yes, definitely. I knew, I guess, I don't know how I knew this. I guess it was just maybe from a lot of research, but I knew the value of the product was in the product, not in the equipment that I was using to make. And when I would go to a store, I knew that if I went to a store to try to sell a product, what I was selling was the package and the product itself, not, hey, I've got all these ovens that I'm baking in. So I knew the ability to sell it was going to be much easier if the product was really good. So not only the taste but the design. So that's really, and also just me personally, I like that kind of stuff. I've always been kind of a creative type, where I like art. I like looking at brands and why they do this or why is it designed that certain way. So I think it was just kind of a natural something that I liked a lot and noticed in other brands too. So that's kind of probably why I lean that way. But So yeah, I started to try to bake actually in this kitchen. This was one of my early hurdles. The kitchen was great for a restaurant, but it wasn't great for baking. And this was one of the first lessons I learned in baking, is that humidity plays a huge part in the outcome of the product. So the first day I actually went out and sold 3 stores locally, 2 drugstores and a specialty store. They said, we'll bring it in, we'll give it a try. So I went out to fill those orders at this restaurant the first day. I did exactly what my grandmother showed me. I, did this, did that, and put it in the oven at this temperature. There was a totally different oven. It rained that day. The kitchen was, felt like a sauna, and cookies were basically a pile of mush when I got done. So I wasn't even sure why that happened. I had no clue. And so I thought, well, I think it's just the oven. So I jumped from there to actually the YMCA, tried to bake there. Didn't work there either. I asked a caterer if I could borrow her kitchen while she wasn't using it. Tried it there, it didn't work. And so I was kind of back to square one. Why is this not? Why can't I bake the product? I mean, I had orders waiting on me, and I was kind of having to put them off. And ended up the same guy that owned the restaurant knew about a kitchen that had closed down downtown. And so I went and looked at it. It had been abandoned for maybe 10 years, something like that. And it was pretty gross, but I went in and cleaned it up, spent about a week cleaning it up, got the ovens turned on that were in there. And I knew that even if I tried to bake initially in those ovens and it didn't work, I knew I could spend enough time adjusting certain things to get it to where I needed to. And I just needed the space to be mine so that I could, or at least, I would have the time to do that. So that's what I did. I found a kitchen that was in an old abandoned restaurant, and it took me about a week. The thermometers didn't work on the oven, so I had to buy some, and just kind of temperature was different in this oven than it was in my grandmother's oven, and kind of had to just do trial and error for about a week to kind of figure it out. But ended up figuring it out, and we got kind of off and running. Spent countless hours in this kitchen for about a year and a half baking. I bake early in the morning because if you're a baker, you know that early in the morning's good because there's not as much humidity. The environment's a little bit easier to control. So we bake early in the morning. I pack up some cookies. I get in my truck, drive around kind of the state to some gift shops that I would literally just Google specialty store in Montgomery and find some. I drive up with samples and just say, hey, this is what I'm doing in Selma, and I'm trying to grow this business. It's my grandmother's cookies, and started selling some kind of around the state, and ended up getting to about 35 stores around the state. Anything from gift baskets to drugstores and that kind of thing.
So you were literally a one-man gang.
Oh yeah.
Bake in the morning, getting in your truck, driving around, selling into these different specialty stores in the afternoon, and then wash, repeat, and do it all over again the next day. And
a lot of times I'd come back and have to, bake the orders that I'd gotten that day. So it was get back at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and there was a couple of days I was in there till 11 or 12 at night, baking some of the orders. It went so slow, the baking process, and honestly, I knew that wasn't going to be where I made a living. What I was intending to do is prove the product would sell. Knowing what I know now, I would have done it completely different. I worked myself literally to death trying to just make a living, and I would have done it a little differently had I known what I know now. But that's what I ended up doing, is proving the product would sell.
Mm-hmm. So that first phase was, proof of concept. You had to get yourself in the market to show that there was an audience.
Yeah.
And that there were customers, both the specialty stores and then the ultimate end customer that would buy the product. And how did that go when you got it in the specialty stores? What did you learn?
Yeah, the great thing about getting in, obviously, in Selma stores, people knew me, and that was great. But what I really wanted to do is get it in the markets where people didn't know who I was, and they weren't buying the product because they were excited about the new company and all that, and trying to support a local business. I wanted people to buy because they liked the product, and they really wanted it and wanted to exchange their money for it. So that helped me get going in Selma. I got the local newspaper to write some articles about me. But when I got outside of Selma, one of the keys was getting into the gift baskets that a lot of these stores would do, because there wasn't most of the time a choice from the consumer to purchase it from the store. It was a choice from the store to put it in the gift basket, and it was almost like it was forced onto the customer. And so they would try the product and then come back to the store to get the product. That was one. Another thing was just placement in the store. The way that my bag, it was a coffee bag, actually. We took a craft bag. It didn't stand up very well on the shelf, which at the time I regretted using that bag because it didn't do that. But what it did is it forced the store to find another location to put the product. And so it ended up being where they would put it in a place that was kind of off the beaten path, which a product was going to be a impulse buy anyways. And so they would put it in a place where it would be not sitting next to another cookie, and there'd be a price comparison. It would be more of an impulse type buy. So that kind of helped me get going right off the bat.
Okay. So when you went through that process and got now 35, 40 stores, you're baking in the morning, where did that all lead you? Like you said, you worked yourself to death.
Yeah.
What were the next decisions you had to make? What were those inflex points, and was that a sustainable model?
It wasn't, and mainly because of how my product was made. That was really the big part of it. I had a lot of older kind of mentors during that time that kind of helped me some, and I really didn't know what I was doing, which was a good thing because I probably would have never done it, but I didn't know much about production and that kind of thing. So what I actually tried to do during that time was find a contract bakery to bake it for me. But what I found was that, I didn't have enough volume to really get somebody to bake it for me affordably. And I couldn't get anybody to call me back. I'd call somebody to ask them to bake it for me. And, it was, how many pounds are you doing a month? And I was doing, a couple hundred, and they wanted me to do 10,000 every time we turned the ovens on. And, I just wasn't at that level. So, I looked for equipment that could do my cookie, but had a hard time finding anything that was anywhere remotely affordable for my operation. And honestly, at the time, it felt like I didn't know enough to really make it work, on a bigger scale. So I knew I needed to be able to bake more. It's kind of chicken before the egg. You got to be able to make enough product to sell enough to make enough money. But you also got to have the ability to sell all of it if you make all of it. You make, say, 10,000 pounds, well, you got to be able to sell 10,000 pounds fairly quickly because there's a shelf life on the product. And so where are you going to sell it? And how are you going to sell it? And then how are you going to make it? And so it's a chicken before the egg. You can't go get a salesperson to go out and sell it for you if you can't make it. And you don't want to go buy all the equipment if you don't have a way to get it sold. So it was kind of a chicken before the egg, and I'd talked to some brokers that dealt in the gift gourmet market, considered going to Atlanta to the gift show there. But like I said, if I would have gone to Atlanta and gotten all these orders, I wouldn't have been able to fulfill them. So, and I didn't know how to really manufacture it on the scale that I needed to. So I kind of decided, I was basically breaking even, and I had no money. Wasn't making a living really doing it. I kind of had to take some odd jobs to make up the difference some. And so I decided to put the business on pause just to kind of, take a deep breath, regroup, maybe re-strategize a little bit, learn from some of the things that I wanted to change, I wanted to make some rebranding changes. I wanted to obviously have the ability to make more of the product, and I wanted to deal in a little bit different market. I didn't want to be strictly gift gourmet because I learned from that fourth quarter is really the only time that you're going to see a lot of business closer to Christmas, and I didn't like that part of the business. I wanted to have something a little bit more fluid throughout the year, and I ultimately wanted to be, in your pantry all the time. That's what I wanted to develop, and so in order to do that, I needed to get the cost down too. So that's when I kind of put the business on pause, did a few other things in between. I'd learned to build websites and do some other. I tried my hand at a couple other businesses because when you're sitting in there baking cookies all day, you're thinking, all right, I got a college degree. I'm smarter than this. Mm-hmm. And there's got to be a better way to make a living because I'm working really hard and I'm not making any money. And so I had a handful of other ideas, which I think are still really viable businesses. But I tried my hand at them, a few of them, and I ended up coming back to the cookies. I didn't know when I'd come back to it, but after I'd gotten away from it and away from the, cookie prison, as I called it, because I was in that bakery for so many hours a day, I realized I'd achieved what I was looking for in all these other ideas that I had. I'd proven the product would sell. I just had to get over these hurdles that I had before. And I'd gotten away from it, learned some other things with these other businesses on, scalability, replicating yourself, branding, and just some things that I didn't know back then that I wanted to kind of relaunch and give it a shot again. And this is in 2013 I decided I wanted to do that. So it's about 2 years since I put the business on pause.
That's excellent. I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who talk about the business prison. You call it the cookie prison. Yeah. Others call it, different types of prisons. But they get so engaged in the business that they don't have the time to step back and take a look at the successes and to evaluate the hurdles and how to move beyond them. And it sounds like that you had a couple of different lessons there. One, that you could do some other things while you had some idle time to make up for the revenue gap. But you also learned the value of taking a step back to evaluate the next phase of the business, creating that capacity. And there were some key lessons that I think jumped out. Replicating yourself, also trying to gain more leverage for the business to get through some of those hurdles. Yeah. So tell us where you are now. What did you learn and what was the result?
Yeah, one of the things that I learned in that process is that my time is more valuable spent not baking. It's spent on the front end, the branding, sales. I was better at that than I was baking. So I knew I needed to somehow have somebody else bake it for me when I relaunched the product. So what I did when I decided I was going to relaunch the company is the first step was finding somebody to be able to help me sell it on a bigger scale. I learned that getting into some of these buyers' offices for them to listen to you was really difficult and took years to develop. And so starting a new business, you don't have years. You've got that one big customer or two big customers could help you really just get back up on the map. And so I knew that brokers, salesmen, that they had these relationships. They already bring in products every year and show these buyers that, here are the products I'm representing. And if I could get them to just bring my product with them into the meeting, then I have potential to get into some of these big retailers. And so the first step was finding somebody that would be willing to sell it for me, a broker network. And I found that. I sent samples around. I made them myself. Put them in the old package, but sent an email with the new package when it was going to be designed, what it was going to look like, just to kind of introduce it to the brokers to see if they'd be willing to do it. And most of them were. So that gave me kind of some ammunition, an asset, to then go to somebody to make it for me. Because at the time I had no sales. I wasn't even in business, really. I just had a product, and I had a sales force that wants to sell. So I then went to a contract manufacturer, a bakery. That took a long time. It was the same kind of process, calling people not calling you back, because it's a lot of work for them to take a recipe that was done with cups and teaspoons and done in very small batches and turn it into an industrial recipe, bake it on their oven. Totally different process, but come out with the same product. I found one in Pennsylvania that was willing to kind of take the chance on me, and we spent a couple months doing trial runs. Finally got the cookie, the way I wanted it, and had taken out a line of credit with a local bank to purchase, packaging, printing plates, all that kind of stuff that you have to do when you get going with launching a product. And we started baking in the oven, the bakery in Pennsylvania, and kind of hit the ground running from there. So, yeah.
So now you're a full-fledged production operation.
Yeah, from that point, things have changed. It's been new hurdles on a different scale. And honestly, it's a lot different than what I did before. I learned a lot of the basics and some of the very important lessons early on, but getting into dealing with large chains, category reviews, learning about that, how brokers work, the benefit of brokers, the downside of brokers, and then branding. When we relaunched, I changed the brand from just where it was the company name, Selma Good. We named the cookie individually. We have two types. We have a butterscotch oatmeal and a chocolate chip with pecan. Those are our two SKUs, and I named them individually. I kind of mirrored a brewery, kind of how a brewery does it, where they'll name a specific type of beer, a specific name. But it didn't go over very well in cookie space. It was harder to brand that way. People didn't really get what I was trying to do. So when I relaunched, I tried to simplify it so it wasn't hard to understand. And so we called my grandmother Gummy Mama, and so I shortened that to G Mama. That's where I got that from. And so I decided to name the entire umbrella of cookies G Mamas as the brand under Selma Good Company, just like Nestle or Kellogg would do with their brands under their management. And then name the cookies what they were, so that there was no confusion. People knew what they were buying, because you only got a couple seconds to really catch somebody's eye. And I want them to know this is a chocolate chip with pecan cookie, and this is a butterscotch oatmeal cookie, so that they'll have the opportunity to buy it. They'll know what it is. And so I rebranded, and actually what I did to kind of redesign everything is I drove to an Earth Fair and a Whole Foods, went to the cookie aisle, went to the beer aisle, actually, took a step back, took my phone where you couldn't read the labels, I took a picture, and I asked people, where do your eyes go? And it was always the clean, solid, large colors. The busy design made people skip over. It was harder to kind of pull out. And so what I wanted to do was make my product, my design, very simple, because it's a simple cookie, it's a simple recipe, it's kind of a simple story, it's a simple town, small town, that kind of feel to it, and the design to mirror that. Clean, simple, high-end, but also the colors that would pop out. So that's what I gave my designer. He executed on it. I thought did a very good job. And once we got all the process in place, baking, brokers got the inventory in, we started to send samples around. Brokers started to make presentations. Orders started to come in, and we got into close to about 700 stores right off the bat. Got in the world market. I actually got into that account by a LinkedIn message. The buyer of the cookies for them, sent samples, and 2 weeks later they committed to order. That hasn't happened since. That was pretty neat. Got into about 150 drugstores, and then I got into a distributor for the Southeast. They agreed to distribute it for me, but I had to go out and pick up the customers. So I drove around the state and the Panhandle, handing out samples and telling them this new distributor was going to have them in stock. Here's the item numbers. I'll let you know when they get them in the warehouse, so you can start pulling orders from them, and that kind of kicked it off. And so at that time, October 2013 was when we relaunched. We were baking and packing in Pennsylvania. But the downside of where I was, I couldn't find the perfect partner in baking. I had to find somebody that could bake enough just to get me out there. But the bakery I had didn't have the capability to automatically package the cookies. They promised to get the equipment to do that, but they had to have a piece of equipment that could do 40 bags a minute. And you're talking 6 figures easy, maybe $500,000 for that type of equipment to be able to keep up with their oven. And they promised to get that equipment, but they never did. And so they were a younger company too, and so I kind of had to suffer through some of their growing pains. We had some problems with quality early on, and I had to learn. That was one other thing I had to learn is how do you keep the quality, with my product. I knew when it tasted right and it looked right, it felt right, but I didn't know what the scientific attributes made it that way. Moisture content, pH level. There's certain things that you can use to make sure the quality stays consistent. And so I had to learn that through some bakes that we did that turned out not correct, and had to donate some product to the food bank and some expensive lessons and some sleepless nights. But we've come a long way since then. But going back to the packaging side, they hired some new people that came in, decided they weren't going to package for us anymore, unless we paid them to do it. And it ended up costing me more than I could sell the product for, basically, to pack. And so literally overnight I went from where I was making money to basically not making money, and was kind of scrambling around to figure out how to solve this production kind of issue. And this is in late 2014 that this happens. We had gotten into Cracker Barrel nationwide. We had just gotten approval for Walmart. So we'd gotten some big accounts, and we're beginning to ship them product. And as you know, you can't turn that off unless you want to be done, unless you're done. So we had to ship a lot of product at a loss just to kind of keep the customer until we could kind of solve this issue. And at this point, I don't have outside funding. I don't have. This is all personal debt that I'm having to finance a lot of this. And so I was scrambling around trying to figure out, all right, here are my two choices. Or I had three actually. One was I could sell the company, sell it to somebody that could bring the baking in house and could package it, and they could make money doing it. Couldn't sell it for much, but I could probably pay off the debt that I had. Or I could buy the piece of equipment that was needed to pack the cookies, put it in Pennsylvania with the bakery, and next thing you know, I own the piece of equipment in Pennsylvania. Or third option is to move everything here to Selma, from A to Z. Move the baking, packaging, all here. And I ended up deciding to do the third option, which is to move it all here to Selma. And this is kind of where the story gets a little more interesting again from... So I found an outside investor who loves Selma and wants to see Selma, revived as much as I do, and is a family friend, great guy, and wanted to invest in my business. So invested in the business. We took an old Dollar General that had been empty for 15 years. I think it went from Dollar General to movie rental to whatever else. I think it was a drugstore at one point too, but it was empty. It's about 10,000 square feet. We came in and put up walls, redid the floors. I did a lot of the work myself, redoing the floors, and tried to make it as cost efficient as possible, doing all that. Put in equipment. The equipment we put in was a little bit of a step down in production capacity, just because we were limited on budget. The oven that we baked in Pennsylvania was about $1 million, $1.5 million. Didn't raise that much money, so we put it in an oven, and they could do about 1,000 pounds an hour. That's the capacity they had. The oven we put in would hold 40 pans at a time, which I estimated based on every oven I've ever baked in to be able to do 350 pounds an hour, which is really probably what we needed at the time with the growth that we had and the amount of orders and that kind of thing. So we put in equipment, and we took about 6 months probably to get the building built and equipment in and all that. Bought a lot of stuff used to try to save on cost, because a new oven like I bought was about $40,000 new. I bought it for I think 10 or 12. Their value goes down really quickly once they get installed and start getting used. So, but they'll last forever. They're real simple machines. So I put that in and started trying to bake, and it wouldn't bake the product right. The way that it baked the product was different than what's being done in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, it travels on a conveyor 160 feet long, and so you can get more, you have more ability to change the way a product is baked because it's traveling through certain chambers. And so during the process of the bake, you can go up temperature on the bottom part of the oven or down the top, and certain things, you can slow the belt down, to really hone in on the process. Well, with this, you put it in the oven, and you can change the temperature to take it through a cycle, but the way the heat gets applied is different. It's more fit for bread or a yeast type product, or actually a larger cookie would do fine. But Mars was so small, it had a hard time staying consistent from top to bottom in that oven. And we could never get the moisture content low enough to have a shelf life that was equal to what we already had. And so we were having to, we thought we put 40 pans in it. Well, it turns out you could only put 20 for it to even get close to baking right. So production capacity went from 350 pounds an hour down to 100 pounds an hour.
Wow.
And so at that point, I realized from the oven back, the pauser, mixer, cooler, really had no need for it. So that was a pretty tough pill to swallow when I kind of realized that. It was like, what did I just do kind of thing. That was kind of how I felt. But, I kind of just said, you know what, got to put my big boy pants on and We're going to sell that equipment. We're going to package the cookies here in Selma. We're going to get them baked in Pennsylvania. We're going to ship them to me in bulk, and we're going to put them on the packaging line. It's going to cut out that cost of having to pack it. Yeah, we'll have the freight, but we have that anyways. And it's actually cheaper to ship bulk cookies than it is to ship cookies in a pack. So we'll make up a little bit there, and we'll have the capacity to really scale this thing, because we can package them fast, much faster than we could have baked them. And I wanted that capacity to do that. And we'll take the equipment that we've used to pack the cookies, and we'll try to fill some line time with other people's products, because we can do coffee, rice, granola, those sorts of things. So we'll try to fill some idle time doing that as well. So
you resold some of your excess capacity, again, to close the gap.
Yeah, and needed cash, so we got rid of some equipment. Didn't take too bad of a loss on it because we've already used anyways and hardly used it. And so that's where we are now. We have a packaging line. We call it a packaging plant. We're a contract packer, in some ways, and we've got a warehouse. So, which allowed us to be very flexible on how we fulfill orders. When we started back up, I had a warehouse in Indiana. I could only ship pallets. If they shipped it an individual box, the cookies were going to get to the location and just be crumbs. So now we can take and ship 2 bags, 5 bags. We can handle a lot of our e-commerce orders ourselves, and then we can do, we're not paying for storage fees and that sort of thing. So it's allowed us to be more flexible, and so right now we're shipping product into us in bulk. And we've gotten pretty efficient at that. So when we first started doing that, we were pretty inefficient, but we're packaging the product here in Selma and baking in Pennsylvania, hoping to maybe get it closer to Selma, in the near future, but that's what we're doing right now.
Great. What's your next step now? You're in with how many stores?
Yeah, we're in probably a little north of 1,000 right now. Cracker Barrel makes up the bulk of that. We're in about 700 of their stores, so bulk of that. But we've just gotten into Publix. We're in a little over 10 right now. Should be in 20 by the end of the year. They're doing a local program kind of with Alabama and NCAP for Alabama products. We've just gotten approval for Winn-Dixie. We're in about 5 to 7 of those right now. It's gone well so far. They're similar to Publix. It's a local kind of program. We're in Piggly Wiggly, probably about 20 of those, and have just gotten approval for their warehouse. So I've hired a broker group that goes into the stores and actually manages like the stock on the shelf for Piggly Wiggly. A lot of lower end type stores, but there's still a handful of stores in higher demographic areas that we're just kind of getting going. We've gotten into Associated Grocers of the South, which is in Birmingham, which distributes to about 300 some odd independent grocery stores around the South, mostly Alabama. We got our first order from them, and we're bringing in a display for some of their stores right now. We just launched a small bag, which is a whole another story in and of itself. I did the artwork for the bag in 2014, so that's how we just launched it. So it's almost 2017, so that's been equipment getting lost, print bags printed wrong, the whole 9 yards. But we've just launched that, gotten into some distributors there. That's targeted at the convenience store market. One of the things that we've seen with our product is, it's anywhere from $3.99 to really $6, which is a hard one-time purchase for people. It's harder, but a small bag will be retailed at $1.59 to $1.99, and for somebody to come off of $2 to try a product, it's a lot easier than $6. And not only that, but we've had a lot. I've heard comment after comment, I can't buy your cookies because I'll eat the whole bag. And so, that sounds like it's a good thing, but it's honestly, people aren't buying the product because they're scared they're going to eat the whole thing. And they're maybe trying to watch their weight. And so to kind of curb that, a small bag is something that just, hey, I just want a little G-Mamas. I just don't want to go over the top and eat the whole bag. I just want to quench my sweet tooth. And so this is targeted at convenience stores and specialty stores that with another option that's a little cheaper, and that's going well so far. And not only that, but we're developing another cookie. We see that it's extremely important to have like a cookie line as opposed to just 2 products, and it's kind of 2 things. Number one, it's obviously more revenue, and that helps, but it's also on the shelf. It's a billboard, and so if a store will put in all 3 SKUs when we develop another cookie, it gives our brand more credibility, more eyeballs, and it allows the consumer to pick more within our brand. The goal is to have 4, but we're working on the 3rd right now, It may be like a salted caramel, sea salt caramel type butter cookie. Honestly, something easy to package and not too terrible expensive to make. Pecans are expensive. Butterscotch is, not the most readily available morsel out there, so something a little more easier and less costly to make. So those are kind of the focal points. And then just growing within the stores that we're in. We sell the product all over, but my focus is the Southeast. I want every household in the Southeast to know about Mommas Cookies, and and then at that point, then we can really focus on how do we scale it across the country. And we are selling across the country. We've got a distributor in San Francisco. We sell Oregon, Washington, all those places. But my focus is let's get Publix, let's get Winn-Dixie, and let's saturate those stores. Let's move a lot of cookies through those stores here in the Southeast. That's the focus right now for us.
Right. So you want to get more per store now.
Yes.
Try to get more sales per store, and then clone that nationwide to really blow the brand out, get it going where you want it to go.
Absolutely. I mean, we just seeing some of our stores that move tons of cookies, how your margin increases because there's less transportation. It's just more efficient, and you matter to the store. They'll put you in prime locations because they know they're going to move more product, and they want your product. If you don't have it, it's they're like, hey, we need to get some more of these cookies. It's not you having to resell it, And so it's just you become more important. And two, I'm currently trying to raise capital. When you're talking to somebody about raising capital, it's how many cases or how many SKUs per week are you selling in these stores? And the same thing with a buyer for a new store, a new chain, say Target. Their first thing they want to know is how are you doing in the stores that you're in, not how many stores you're in. So that's kind of our focus, is to become more important and growing deeper as opposed to wider in these stores.
Excellent. Well, this has been a terrific conversation. I know every time I hear your story, I learn a lot more and have a greater appreciation for entrepreneurship.
Thank you.
What last message would you tell to all the entrepreneurs out there about your path and about their potential path in getting into business?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that I wouldn't have thought were keys to entrepreneurship. But number one is people around you. I think Jim Rohn says that we're the average of 5 people that we spend the most time with, and I think that's very true. Surrounding yourself with people that are positive, but also are going to tell you the truth. And people that have, if you can find somebody that's done something similar in your space, maybe that's 10 years ahead of you or 15 years ahead of you, it's invaluable, because a lot of times, there's a lot of days that I'm like, I don't even know what to do. I don't know how to solve this problem. To have some perspective for somebody that's been there, done that, that's huge. Mentors is kind of, I guess, the short way of saying that. And then having that attitude of you're just not going to quit, Doesn't mean that you're stubborn in the way that you think, but there's always a solution, and so not quitting on finding that solution, and then sometimes it's knowing when to quit. I know when I was doing the cookies before, making them by hand, and having to put things on pause at that point in the business, I didn't really know if I'd ever start it again. And I'd become so obsessed and married to the idea. It was like a divorce or a death in the family. It was difficult to shut it down because I put so much of my heart into it, But I had advice from others and was able to just say, you know what, you got to know when to press pause, and that'd be important. So I think just having that attitude that the buck stops with me and I'm not going to quit. So.
Robert, thank you for giving our Guerrillapreneurs a mini MBA and a deep look inside the life of a cookie entrepreneur. You reiterated some key Guerrillapreneur lessons like capital preservation during the launch of your startup and learning how to create leverage after proof of concept. If you guys out there listening have not tried Mommas Cookies, look for them on Walmart, Winn-Dixie, Publix, and Cracker Barrel shelves, or order them direct from their website at gmommas.com. GMOMMAS.com. Thank you for listening to Guerrillapreneur, the Art of Waging Small Business Warfare podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, you may also enjoy my book, Guerrillapreneur, Small Business Strategy for Davids Wanting to Defeat Goliaths. Look for it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. Please also follow me at Guerrillapreneur and check us out at Ceyero.com, Ceyero.com. We have templates and startup documents for entrepreneurs, and you can also sign up for our newsletter. I want to leave you with a quote from a great Chinese military strategist, Sun Tzu. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. See you next time. Keep fighting, Guerrillapreneurs.